Okay, so 51 bucks a month, YouTube ads as a service. Every single client includes all software, everything. It helps me operate at like 70% margins at scale, pushing closer to 100K a month. There are four main things that are involved here that I want to touch on. The first is in-house versus outsourced service. The second is systematizing onboarding. The third is reducing operational complexity. And then the fourth one is creating a set of conditions. So diving into in-house versus outsourced service, a lot of people naturally want to hire a media buyer, for example, do things like this. So there are pros and cons to each, where if you hire in-house, it's always, always, always going to be significantly cheaper to hire and do everything in-house. So that's the first thing you're going to want to look at. So one of the biggest ways that I was able to make this so much less or so much more affordable was by doing everything in-house, as opposed to outsourcing, hiring a media buyer, or worse, hiring an agency, because you're paying a massive you're paying for them to do all their marketing, you're paying for them to fulfill the service, and you're paying them to profit off of your service delivery, which makes your costs higher, which makes it significantly harder for you to price out competitors, and it damages your margins and so on and so forth. Ideally, when we're running at, let's say, a lean 20, 30K per month, ideally we want to be running at like, 90% plus profit margins. So in-house is one of the best things that you can do. And this is what I personally do. We do all of our advertising, all of our client service, everything is in-house. Now, this is where you'll, start hiring team members and so on and so forth. But if you do what I'm going to show you later in this video, you can honestly just do it, or at least do a good chunk of it, with VAs. So you don't have to pay crazy amounts of money or really anything like this. It's incredibly affordable, and in some cases it's honestly just like crazy cheap, basically. So again, if you outsource, if you hire a media buyer or you hire an agency, it's just going to cost more. You're paying a premium, basically, for convenience. That's sick writing, for convenience. Jeez. But yeah, you're paying a premium here. Here, it's harder. So that's worth like mentioning too, right? Here, it's easier. So again, something to consider. I personally prefer to play on hard mode. That's just one of my values in general, play on hard mode, because the reward is just significantly higher when you play on hard mode. You make way more money, and that's all there is to it. Same goes with calling teams. You can outsource to an ISA company. You can outsource to a media buyer for ads, ISA company, or for the calling of the leads, or you can hire a calling team, which is harder, but it's also cheaper, right? Or you can run the ads yourself, which is harder, but also cheaper. And I personally believe that these are skills that you'll want to learn yourself anyway. Up to you whether or not you provide all those services, but either way, if you want to make things as cheap as possible, I'd recommend going in-house. The second thing, systematizing your onboarding. You can cut crazy costs with your onboarding, and onboarding really is something that shouldn't be too crazy. And when we get into the third thing, which is reducing operational complexity, that actually helps you systematize your onboarding. But with your onboarding, there's really no need for anything other than just having a VA do your onboarding. And in a lot of cases, you can just use like high-level snapshots or Zapier automations when people sign DocuSign contracts and so on and so forth. There are some really, really nice ways, either with humans or in this case with software, to systematize your onboarding. But there's more to it, because on the human side of things, like what you'll want to do is make sure that there are intellectual systems in place. These, I talked about systems in a previous video. These are more of the intellectual systems where you're teaching people how to do very specific things, how to go over onboarding call scripts and what to say if the person says this and what happens in this situation and so on and so forth. Knowledge-based systems, another value of mine is knowledge is king. It's literally all about what you know. Business is all about what you know, and insane, and it's pay to win too, which is wild. So if you played a pay to win video game, business is pay to win, which is crazy. It's a crazy concept. But anyway, you can also automate some parts with software. So your onboarding should not be expensive at all. Like, you can make onboarding so ridiculously dirt cheap. So if your onboarding is like costing you an arm and a leg, and it's like just a huge percentage of your overall client cost is in onboarding, then I'd recommend making some changes. And on that topic, one of the things that can make your onboarding much more lean or leaner is reducing operational complexity. So here's what I mean. It's really like your total number of services you're providing. So how many services are you providing? And so there's the number, and then there's also like, is it custom? Or is it productized? If it's productized and you have one service, then your operational complexity is as little as possible. So in the onboarding setup, there's just less to do. You can have like a Google form of questions. That's what we do, just to get general information about the client so that we can bring them on. Whereas if you're going custom, then you need to make custom ads. You need more information about what exactly they're looking for. You need more information about their specific business compared to other businesses, where if you're selling, in this case, you're selling to multiple niches and you're doing multiple things within each niche, right? What happens here also is not only like, because we're talking big picture about, how we're fulfilling clients for very, very low prices and also getting very reliable results, right? So if you're doing like social media management and graphic design and running ads for them and doing this and doing that, it's like, if you're doing something different for every client, then how are you supposed to get a repeatable result? Reliable inputs, reliable outputs. Reliable inputs yield reliable outputs. Oh, geez. Reliable outputs. Have you ever done chemistry? Yes. But really, like, if you can make your business as much of an assembly line as possible, which I talked about in another video, that's what's going to help. So productizing, very key, very helpful, and reducing the number of services is also extremely, extremely helpful. To scale with this model, we've only ever offered one service. And only in moving to high retainer clients, $5,000 a month, this kind of thing, have we stepped into anything else. And even then, we have extremely reliable testing processes that we can map onto each of these things. And generally speaking, even then, we're not even getting that customized. We're really not, because we have a proven method. And the last thing that we want to do is veer away from these proven methods and get into more of this custom territory, which is really just kind of like red flag territory, because again, you don't have reliable inputs. Or if you're going more custom, then you want to make sure you have as many reliable inputs as possible. Then you want to minimize the amount of inputs that are unreliable or different, or that need to be tested from scratch. So if you've brought on clients in 3 different niches and they're doing totally different things, and you've never worked in any of these niches before, and so now you're doing like 4 services here, and like they're also custom, you have no reliable inputs. So your outputs are just like all over the place. You don't know what's going on. You start to panic and everything just becomes a mess. How are you supposed to scale that? One thing I learned from Sam Ovens, and he has a YouTube video on this: scale, mess, and debt. As you scale, what you have amplifies. Then there's a mess, and then you're in debt, and you have to clean the mess up before you can scale again. So the leaner you run from the beginning, the fewer services you have in your offering, the more productized you are, and the more reliable your inputs, the further you can scale before having more mess that you need to clean up, and the less mess you'll have that you need to clean up. So that's a quick SAM concept, but here what I'm really talking about: reduce the total number of services, productize if possible. If you want to be getting these like really cheap delivery costs and everything, productize, have it be in-house, right? Systematize your onboarding. These things are really, really going to help just reduce your overall cost to fulfill a client. And then the fourth thing here is to create a set of conditions. And with this, I'm talking about media buying. Jeez, that's sick. Um, what I mean here is like media buying is actually technical and it's a numbers game. A lot of people don't know. Like a lot of people come in with questions and they're like, "Do I turn this campaign off? Do I turn this? Should I turn this ad off? What, like should I turn this ad on? How is this campaign performing?" There's so many questions. This is why I say knowledge is king. If you know at what point you should be killing ads, if you know at what point like you don't need to worry about, even in your own business, for example, your show up rate, but just talking client service here. Um, if you know what the result is supposed to look like, and then you can create inputs that hit this every single time, so you have a control, right? You have a baseline to test with for every single client that comes on board. You have your proven, reliable, ads, for example, right? Then you can run those, but then also you can give this set of conditions. It's kind of like code, like if X, then Y. So if a certain amount of money has been spent, then with X dollar lead cost, then turn ad off. Or if a certain amount of money has been spent and lead cost is below a certain number, then keep ad on. You want to create set in stone conditions, like a guide for somebody to come on and follow. So like Nick in my business, for example, he had zero media buying experience, like whatsoever. I'm going to draw this a fourth time. Oh, dude, I'm incredible. Zero media buying experience. And just because I had a set of conditions for him to follow, he was able to pick it up and learn very quickly because I also had a control. I had a set of ads that just simply worked. So then I could give them to him. And you could even theoretically hire, I wanted to hire somebody based in North America I was looking for very strong brains. And that will generally cost you a premium. But you could theoretically do this with a virtual assistant as well. Create this set of conditions. All you have to do is train them on the set of conditions. And then all of a sudden your job in client service is just like writing ads every once in a while. Like it becomes nothing really like crazy or anything like that. So life becomes a lot easier. All of your costs go down like crazy. But then not only that, what happens is your client results go way up too. Like way up, way up. And ironically, in a lot of cases, you're doing less because of all of these things. So again, I recommend going in-house. It's cheaper, it's harder, but it's cheaper and there's more reward and nobody wants to do it. Do what nobody wants to do, you'll make what nobody has. Systematize your onboarding. It's really simple. This should be incredibly cheap, ideally with as much software integration as possible, custom fields, all this kind of stuff, forms, Zapier, and then in the human element, just create systems there. Reduce operational complexity, minimize the number of services. Try not to provide custom services unless your retainers are very high, $5,000 a month, this kind of thing. Productize as much as possible. Have as many reliable inputs as possible because reliable inputs yield reliable outputs. And then create a set of media buying conditions just so that you have a baseline, you have a control, and so that anybody you hire knows whether or not to turn ads on or off so there's no confusion and life just becomes significantly easier. Now, if you found this video valuable and you're interested to learn more personally from me, I did create a private scaling group for agency owners just to work a little more closely so that you can ask me questions directly and get feedback from people who are where you're at or where you're trying to go, network, but also to be able to speak with me directly on a regular basis. There's a link in the description for that. Book a call if you want. Totally up to you. Doesn't matter to me. But yeah, and if you want, go to my channel, watch more of my videos, or you can click whatever's popping up on screen here, and I'll see you there.